Tonight and tomorrow night's last bit of the tour.
Yeah.
How's it been so far, and what's been some of the highlights?
It's been really good. The highlights. Well, the whole thing's been a highlight. I love touring, but I'd have to say that kind of. No, Glasgow was great. Glasgow wasn't as busy as London or Manchester or Birmingham, but they were really lively. And it's just been good to get back out there. It's been 2.5 years since I toured, so it's been really good to get back out there with the people again.
What's the new album about? What's the message you're trying to get through in Double Think?
The new album was loosely inspired by George Orwell's 1984, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, and Yevgeny Zamyatin's We. And it's just about having a political discussion of how relevant those works of fiction are to our life today.
What sort of messages do you try to get across, like in a broad sense, with all your albums, with the music and the lyrics?
I just try to encourage people to think, to question the status quo, to question what they're told, both musically and lyrically, because, you know, there's certain musical boxes that we're all encouraged to stay in, you know?
Yeah.
For marketing purposes. And I'm not really with it.
The video for Yours and My Children was shot in Rocinha, Brazil.
Rocinha, it was actually in Rocinha and another favela called Vigário Geral, which is in the north zone of Rio where nobody goes. People go to Rocinha, it's rough, but it's kind of one of the tourist favelas.
Yeah. Even
though it's very bad, but Vigário Geral, nobody goes. And it was an interesting experience. At least.
How long were you out there for filming the video?
I was only out there a week filming the video. I went to Brazil for 3 months in 2008, which is part of it. It inspired me to go back.
Alright. Did you enjoy it, like seeing Brazil?
No.
No?
I enjoyed it as much as one can enjoy going to a war zone, which is essentially what it is. And so I enjoyed being around the people, I enjoyed the experiences, I enjoyed the love that I received, but was also taken aback by how people can live in a society.
Yeah.
And how people can live in a mansion, looking at people living in tin houses. And the crazy part is some of the favelas are so close to the rich area. When the police and the army go in there to shoot people as they do, they can hear it, they can see it happening. You know, you'd be on the Copacabana looking up at Vidigal, favela, seeing the gunshots go off in the middle of the day, you know? And people live like that, which I find incredible. But then I suppose it's really a metaphor for how we live as Westerners in relation to the rest of the planet. Stop. You know, it's not like we don't know that Asia and Africa and South America have been deliberately made poor, but we continue to live our lives the way we do anyway. So I can't really judge the rich of Brazil. I don't know if they're any different.
On your website, you've got quite an in-depth fictional diary about the future and the way you perceive it. What was your inspirations to write that diary and to perceive that future?
I must suppose the books that I mentioned, 1984, Brave New World and We. Oh well, 1984 particularly was about the future, and Brave New World. And well, they're all about the future. And I suppose the ideas put across in those books, combined with just how ridiculous we're getting. You know, some of the things that I think exist now in the world. If you had told people in, I don't know, ancient Egypt, that one day people are going to sell water, and water is going to be branded.
Yeah.
Even when I sit down and think about it, I think that's lunacy, you know?
Yeah.
Bottled, branded water on a planet that is 75% water.
Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, it's ridiculous. But all the Native Americans, if you told the Native Americans that people were going to own land, actually say we own this land, to them that was a completely foreign concept. What do you mean? You can't own land. Land can't belong to people. And so I was just really thinking about where we're at now and how ridiculous can human greed get. You know?
Yeah.
I think we're going to start charging for air next, honestly. I actually totally think it's possible that, you know, you'll be paying an air tax soon.
Possibly.
Because why not?
We already sell earthen bags.
We already sell bags.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know? But I mean, just, it's going to cost people to breathe.
Yeah.
Can you pay another tax for air? We pay tax to drive over a piece of painting in the road, you know? Someone paints a strip on the street. And I'll give them 50 quid now.
You mentioned your books before, and going through your website, you list them and you do promote them, and you like encourage people to read them, including one of my favourites, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep.
Great book.
Yeah. How does that influence the way you think and the way you live, and you personally?
It's really cliche, but someone said the person you become in 5 years will be a result of the people you meet and the books that you read. And I firmly believe that. I believe that if you think one book, how many thousands of books and conversations and ideas, how many thousands of years of research have gone into creating one book?
Yeah.
For people to not read, to me, is absolute lunacy. You know, particularly if someone coming from the background I come from. I mean, I come from the people that were forced not to not read. You know, people for whom it was illegal to read, and that have a very long history of reading and writing. That was, of course, broken. And then once that situation changed, people fought incredibly hard to be educated from that community, you know? People like Booker T. Washington, Elijah McCoy, Dr. Charles Richard Drew, we can go on with the list. So to me, to not read is lunacy, given how many people have sacrificed for me to be able to be educated. And just given what it gives us. Of course, society encourages young people, particularly young working class people, particularly young working class ethnic boys from the inner city, that being dumb is cool, you know, just speak as stupid as you can, and tries to define the culture in that way, and it's very damaging. You know, I grew up seeing conflict really as a result of many things, but sometimes just a result of two people not able to communicate, you know, not able to have the words to express what they wanted to say, so it becomes conflict, you know, people just snap like that. And so I think that our ability to use words, to engage with the language, to receive the education and the wealth of knowledge that we can in this country.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, most countries in the world don't have free libraries.
Yeah.
And we take that for granted. And it's just another reflection of just how apathetic we've become. Particularly for me as an African Caribbean male, when the generations before me fought so hard for the right to be educated.
Yeah.
I think for me to take that for granted would reflect that I didn't know my history very well, and I've been fortunate enough to know my history relatively well from quite a young age, so I've never ever taken that privilege for granted.
Because you have quite a wide range of influences from all over the place. Was that something you latched onto at a young age, or was it something like your family taught you?
It's complex. I mean, and no. I mean, from a young age, books-wise, I was always open and was always, on a musical perspective, again, I was influenced by a wide range of things. But then as I became a teenager, I became heavily just hip-hop, you know. If it wasn't Wu-Tang or Mobb Deep, don't talk to me kind of thing. And then as I grew up, came out of my teenage years, my tastes opened up again. Yeah. And that's been reflected in the music that I've made. But that's been a result of the people I've met, you know, people influencing me. But you have to still be open to it, you know. It had to have been within me, but nonetheless, I've been fortunate to link up with a great producer, good engineer, my friend LeVar, who's been that sort of A&R direction, the new album, and all of those influences have gone into creating what you guys hear today.
Cool. You've written 2 songs which involve Shakespeare being mentioned. Yeah. Obviously, one being called Shakespeare, and the other one, Comedy Tragedy History. Yeah. Which quotes, well, not quotes, but mentions quite a lot of his characters and his plays. Is Shakespeare like one of your biggest influences?
Shakespeare.com, we set up a company called Hip Hop Shakespeare. Yeah, I mean, he's one of the greatest writers in the English language. You know, people have a tendency to go a bit too far and say he's the greatest writer of all time, which I think gets a bit silly, you know. I mean, because how can we compare someone who writes in English to someone who writes in Chinese or Arabic, given that there are concepts in those languages that don't translate into English, so that we as English people can never ever understand. I think it's incredibly arrogant when we start to say someone in our language is the best writer in the world ever.
I think Shakespeare was more of a psychologist of human behaviour.
Certainly an incredible
because people say that he transports you to these places, but he didn't. He's a playwright. He set the scene, and then the characters created those
narratives, those discussions. No, he's an incredible writer. I'm not taking anything away from Shakespeare. I think he's fantastic. But I think we have to also remember he was a writer. You know?
Yeah. No, both your songs are like in homage to.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, they don't sound as if you're coming across as you trying to big yourself up to be like Shakespeare,
he's
but you also write poetry as well.
Yeah.
poets influence you, bar Shakespeare?
Yeah, people like Saul Williams, obviously, who's a kind of huge spoken word poet, but then more the older poets, so a lot of ancient Egyptian poetic writings, or people like Rumi, a lot of the Sufi poetry I'm really into. Kind of Native American poetry, world poetry. I've got a really interesting world poetry anthology. I'm into some of the kind of more recent kind of English and European stuff, but particularly Shakespeare. I think there was something about that time, the kind of pre-Victorian age.
Is it the words that grab you? Because now people use words and they try to either use the words that are higher up than what they're trying to describe to engage the people, or they try and dumb them down. But with Shakespeare, words were everything.
What it is, yeah. But even more recent, even someone like Pablo Neruda, he wasn't particularly complex with the words, but he was a great poet. You know? And I think that who was it who said it? Gabriel Garcia Marquez said, "The more transparent the writing, the more visible the poetry."
Yeah. What is it that draws you to poetry? Like when you were growing up, what made you go, "Oh, poetry"?
It was just music with words. It's music with words, and I love music.
What and who is it that mainly influence you in your life?
Other artists, people I meet, you know, and music and books, but life itself.
Yeah, you're quite open to seeing everything that's there.
I'd like to. Well, within reason. Depends what you mean by it, but yeah. No.
Looking around yourself, taking in your surroundings,
absolutely,
having a broad scope of everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.